Every family in your neighborhood rolls in a mid-size 3-row SUV, but they do not roll out in one of these. These are brand new for 2023. That's the refreshed Kia Telluride X-Pro. This is the all-new Honda Pilot TrailSport. They are off-road friendly SUVs with better equipment inside and out, and they're really pretty nice for around $50,000 to $55,000. But my task today in the winter is to show you, on and off-road, which one is truly better. And what could be better than getting a cash offer from dealers nationwide on CarGurus? Go online, get a cash offer nationwide, and if you like the price, your dealer will pick it up and they'll pay you. The Pilot is all new in its 4th generation. The Telluride was all new for 2019 and it's now refreshed for 2023. Good luck buying either of these. These vehicles are so hot, it's going to be hard to find either of them in stock, especially when they look like this. This is going to be a very close comparo because all the specs we're going to show you are almost dead even, like the engines. Naturally aspirated V6s, 8-speed automatic over here, 10-speed over there, identical torque, and they both run on 87 octane, thank goodness. Now, check out the actual fuel economy because it's not actually very good. These are off-road versions of these very, very popular vehicles, so they make the worst numbers in their respective lineups. That's because they have all-terrain tires, suspension lifts, all of that stuff that helps on the trail, not so much on the road. I'll show you that in just a bit. The previous Pilot was good, but it was feeling too much of a van for me, so this one has all the edge and the extra length to make it feel like a substantial truck, including this hood, which is a little lower and it's longer. And this pronounced edge, a lot more so than the old Pilot. You get a nice kind of just trapezoid shape here, blacked out grille, because this is the TrailSport trim with these black 18-inch wheels and this exclusive paint. It's called Diffused Sky Pearl. It was a concept car back in 2016 when the outgoing Pilot debuted. Honda never came out with the color until now. And overall, the whole vehicle just looks sharp, it looks tailored, it looks like nothing else that Honda's made. The Telluride was already handsome, so what did Kia have to do besides change the DRLs, change the grills, add some new wheel designs? That's really all they had to do. It looks nice. But they went further because this is the X-Pro, so you get special 18-inch black wheels instead of the 20s that would come on this model. Continental terrain contact tires, which are the exact same that you'll find on the TrailSport. You get body color door handles. You also get raised roof rack. That's essentially what you're getting because every Telluride just looks pretty good. When I compare rears, I like the Tellurides, especially these hockey stick lights. I love the design, it's so clever and simple. And now for 2023, the turn signals are up here instead of down by the bumper where they used to be. This is just better for looks and for safety. Now over in the Pilot, it looks like no other Honda SUV so far. Pilot is spelled out just like Telluride here is on the back hatch. And these lights are totally different. It's got a nice bubble effect going around here, lots of creases, but I do like the cleaner design of this Kia. The Pilot is 3 inches longer than the Telluride, whereas the Telluride has almost another ½ inch to the wheelbase. Otherwise, the dimensions are very, very similar. These are both 7 or 8 passenger SUVs. Now, let's talk about towing capacity. 5,000, 5,500. Not too much of a difference, but the X-Pro version of that Telluride does have a little bit more to it. And finally, approach and departure angles. Because these are lifted SUVs, the Telluride has another 4/10 of an inch, but the Honda has 1 inch. So in the front, with the approach angle, the Honda wins. However, the rear bumper design of the Telluride really makes a difference for the departure angle. It's another close measuring contest when you talk about what's inside. The Kia gives you a few more cubes behind the 3rd row, but in exchange, the Honda gives you a little bit more behind the 2nd row. And in total, they're both 87. Pretty large. The Kia has a household power outlet in the tailgate, but the Honda really helps you in the trail because there's integrated recovery loops into the tow hitch. That's really nice because they're right here. You don't have to go hunting for them. This Pilot seats 7. I got the captain's chairs, they recline, got a 3rd row climate. I'm still enjoying the panoramic moonroof. There's USB ports in every single row. And if you order the 8-passenger Pilot, this section will actually fold down, you can remove it, and then you stow it underneath the cargo hatch. That's pretty nice. No other SUV lets you do that. It's not quite as opulent as the Telluride because this Pilot is not the fully loaded Elite, so just be aware. The Pilot looks basic, but it feels better than that Telluride, even where it doesn't count, like where these door panels are. The materials are actually nicer, I think it'd be nice if it was dressed up in different colors. On different Pilot trims, you can get that. The TrailSport comes in all black, but as a cabin, it's much improved over the old one. Orange is the new black. That's basically what it looks like inside the TrailSport. On the headrest, on the stitching, on the dash, everywhere. It lets you know it's extra special. But what's really nice here is how Honda has redesigned the Pilot to make it just more modern. This looks more like the Civic or the CR-V. It's carrying a family resemblance, and the only thing I don't like is this touchscreen just stuck on the dash. That's what makes it feel dated. But all the other controls, everything in here does feel high quality. I prefer the Pilot's panoramic moonroof. Say that 10 times fast. Look at it. The glass is uninterrupted. This portion opens. The Telluride has two smaller openings. I also like these seats better. Even though it's not Napa leather, this leather feels really nice and the seats are just more supportive. I will say the lack of a panoramic moonroof on the Pilot, it's way better for the second and third row right here. It's like all glass. Climate controls are up here, separate zone, and each of these outboard seats has heated and ventilated seats, plus the shades. Plus there's another 115 volt household outlet. The seats just feel better. Now again, you can get some of these features, but not all of them if you upgrade to that Pilot Elite. But as it stands, this Telluride, kind of hard to beat. New on the refreshed Telluride, a new steering wheel. They changed some of the shapes of these air vents, and they've given us some newer trim. I don't like how it looks. It looks very fake. It's kind of how Buick used to do things, so I wish Kia would reconsider what it's putting there, but it does feel like a nice interior. I love this two-tone color scheme. But the Pilot feels like it's living in the past when you look at the Telluride's dual 12-inch screens. This is a new option for 2023. It elevates this interior by a grand scale. Even the little details like the toggle switches for the heated and ventilated seats, or the way that these map, nav, radio, and media buttons are all painted in silver, it has a more upscale look than the Pilot. This is the top of the line Telluride, so it's the Prestige, you get a soft roof, you get nice leather, but not everything is as high quality as it appears. The door panels, even around here, below the belt, even here looks nice and soft, it's not. So despite what it looks like in here, like it's a budget BMW, it's not. The Honda Pilot actually matches it in terms of quality. For looks, I do like it in here though. This 7-inch digital instrument panel is standard and it's really only half analog, half digital. So again, this is another letdown next to the Telluride in terms of tech. The full 10-inch digital is only available on the Elite. But credit Honda again for simplicity. Everything is accessible on the steering wheel. Honda used to have a feature called Lane Watch. Now it has Trail Watch, where you're in the off-road modes, the front camera automatically displays and it stays on. You also see the 360-degree cameras. You can also see the side profile, so you can see the wheels turning. And also nice, there's a front camera washer. The Telluride wins on tech. For one instance, navigation is standard, and that includes over-the-air map updates for several years. That's a really great feature. Doesn't come included on the TrailSport. And now there's standard Wi-Fi and an optional digital key that will let you use your iPhone and your Android phone to unlock and lock the vehicle. There's also more safety features for 2023. It's got forward emergency braking when you're turning left at intersections, plus it'll adjust the speed when you're doing adaptive cruise control, and it detects that you might be going too fast for the speed limit. Plus, there's a lot of luxury grade features that you won't find in the Honda. For example, this will even automatically change the lumbar every 30 minutes or an hour. It's supposed to relieve discomfort while you're driving. That's nice. The heated and ventilated seats can be linked to the climate settings, so you won't even have to touch them. You just set the temperature and you forget it. And there's other features like a head-up display that's now 10 inches instead of the old 8.5 inch, so that's more information on the display than ever before. But the only thing I don't like about it is that all of these icons are so small and they're so similarly sized and shaped that at a glance, you can't really tell what you're looking at. For example, is that a battery? No, it's a microphone on a tablet? I'm not really sure. What is that, valet mode? Not really even sure about that either. So the Honda does a better job of projecting this information at a glance much easier. So that's safer while you're driving. The benefit of a fully digital instrument panel is that you can have some fun with it. All these nice animations and changing graphics depending on the drive mode if you so choose. There's also a new mode that shows a nice country view, I suppose. I like that a lot. If you go back into the normal mode, this is honestly the best thing anywhere. No one really else has it, just Hyundai, Kia, and Genesis. Blind spot cameras right where you expect them on both sides. Honda used to have this, it was called Lane Watch, now only Kia does. Compared to the Honda, there's a little more tire noise coming inside the Telluride, even though they're the same exact tire. It's a little curious there. Seems to be more insulation in the Honda than in this Telluride. I will say though, that otherwise it's a pretty pleasant car to drive. You get that nice upright commanding seating position. Everything's nice and square, very easy to see out of. But yeah, every time I drive, I'm doing roughly 40 miles an hour right now, that tire hum is coming straight through. And that's typically what does happen with all terrains. But in the Pilot, you just don't even hear or feel the vibrations. And Telluride gets right up to speed. It has no trouble shifting. And when you're in the full sport mode and full throttle, it's going. Highway driving assist comes standard on the Telluride, and it's a really good semi-automated system. You can see it working right here on the digital dash. Makes using the distance and the lane markings very easy to see. Now, there's fewer driving modes on the Telluride. That's okay, because sometimes these things can be way too overwhelming when you've got like 8 or more things to choose from. But even in sport mode, let me put that in there now because I'm driving comfortably now. Doesn't quite have the same response as that Honda. There's 2 fewer gears. And this 8-speed never really was that great before in the Telluride. I think it was its one major weakness. Because the V6 is fine, it definitely has the power, but the response isn't always there. When you compare this to 8 speeds from, say, I don't know, I always bring up BMW because that's just the king of transmission and powertrain tuning. It's not as good, and this is a $55,000 truck, so those comparisons are valid. They really are. Not as good as the Hondas. Braking feels pretty secure. Pedal travel's a little long, but it does the job. So when you buy an X-Pro, you don't get any extra driving modes. There's a snow mode, which I've activated, and there's the same 50-50 front-rear split. So you press this button in the center, that's nice. It locks it that way, so that way the rear axle is always engaged. Doesn't send as much torque to the rear as the Honda, and there's no torque vectoring system, but Kia has changed the traction control system, recalibrated that. So let's see how it goes. So even though I'm in a snow mode, I don't actually have a dedicated off-road mode that would disable the parking sensors and keep this front camera on, which is kind of a shame. So I got to turn that off and then try to turn these cameras on. So I'll do that now. And they just disappear. See, that's kind of an issue because this really nice high-res screen, can't use it. Especially with the front camera. I really want to see what's happening. The Pilot lets me do that. And there's great visibility in the Telluride, so it's not like you absolutely need a 360 camera system, but it's just helpful when the trail does get a little bit narrow. The X-Pro is also lifted 4/10 of an inch versus a regular Telluride. And 4/10 of an inch does matter. In car suspension, it totally does, but there's no other suspension changes whatsoever. So this is okay. It's moving. Traction control is figuring stuff out. Power right through, that's good. So on like light roads, light snow, this is really kind of all you need. But quite frankly, if you say have an older Telluride or you couldn't get this X-Pro, you could just buy any Telluride and slap a set of all-terrains on it. You'd have the same car. The Pilot feels like a luxury vehicle. It feels more like an Acura MDX because it's that quiet. Even with these all-terrain Continentals, they're the exact same tire and type, right down to the lettering on the sidewall. Same tire as the Kia. This one just has better tuning. It really does. I could be fooled into thinking this was the Pilot Elite or the Touring with the standard all seasons, riding on bigger wheels. It's just feels like it's no different. That's great. It really is. Almost every vehicle I drive with all-terrains, you can immediately sense the difference from that tread, both in the noise and the steering feel. It's not overwhelming, but it's always there. And this Pilot, it's like the engineers just muted that all out. They just softened it to almost where it's non-existent. With this new Pilot, Honda has made improvements everywhere, as you'd expect. So it's safer. The whole body shell is more rigid. They've changed the steering, they've changed the suspension in every way imaginable. So nothing is truly carryover. If it is, they've made a change to it. So right there, that's already a much newer vehicle to start than the Telluride. The Telluride's good, but the bones on here, I'm gonna say right now, they just feel a little more solid to me. So there's a few new driving modes for 2023, including Sport, which kind of turns this into a Civic Si, a little bit, because the dash and this steering wheel, they feel very much off like the smaller Honda cars, and even a lot of the steering feel. The weighting definitely tightens up in your hand when you engage Sport. Of course, there's not a ton of off-center feel, but compared to the Kia, I feel like I'm in slightly greater control. I like that. The previous Pilot just didn't have the same level of Honda suspension and ride tuning. I didn't think it did. This one now is just tighter. It just feels like it's more direct with the road. Feels like one of Honda's cars more than their SUVs. I think that's where they really needed to go, and they've actually delivered. Very nice progressive pedal feel. Maybe it's just the mileage on this Pilot versus the Telluride, but I like the feel better. Honda made a lot of improvements to this V6. Now, there's 5 more horsepower, and you're not going to notice that. That means this V6 is going to last for longer through tougher emissions laws. That's pretty nice because this V6, as it is pretty simple. There's no hybrid, there's no turbo. That means long term, as great as those systems are, it's probably going to last longer and cost you less to run. Because the Pilot has a 10-speed, that's 2 more gears than the Telluride, and it's 1 more gear than the previous Pilot, well, the response times are much better. So in normal mode, it doesn't really pick up that much. It feels more like a Mercedes-Benz when you're in comfort mode. But if you switch this into Sport, not an amazing jump, but the gears are shifting quicker than before, including when you use the paddles, which the Telluride does not have. I'm surprised. But I've driven the previous Pilot several times and other vehicles with that 9-speed transmission made by ZF. It wasn't Honda. This is a Honda transmission now, and it is so much better. Because the response time between 4th and 5th gear, there's no more lag like there used to be. Yeah, it's way, way better than before, and it's a better transmission than the one in the Telluride. Mid-range acceleration is much improved over the old Pilot, and it's definitely better than the Telluride. Those lower 4 gears really kick in. And even though it's crazy to say you've got a 10-speed transmission, the fact is that those lower gears are always more available. And then on the highway, going at higher speeds, the engine's really turning at a really lazy RPM. It's like, at 80 miles an hour, you could be doing about 2,000 RPM, so that saves the fuel. But the response is better. And I think Honda also just muted the engine a bit more. There doesn't seem to be as many vibrations and as much harshness as I remember. Because I remember this V6 just kind of being a little gritty, especially for a Honda power plant. But they've ironed that out. Yeah, much better. Honda sensing comes standard on every Pilot, and that includes lane centering, includes adaptive cruise control. Honda's had this for years. I remember testing this on Acuras back in 2014, even earlier. The system is one of the first and one of the best. So the last time I was in a TrailSport was a year ago. It was the Passport, which is the shorter version of the Pilot. And I was lamenting, I was complaining because Honda didn't do anything besides add new tires. They didn't. And even the Pilot had a slightly higher lift than before, but now they've actually gone in and changed everything. So the suspension is different. The stabilizer bars are different. There's a full inch lift and 2 big skid plates, one protecting the engine and transmission up front and another on the fuel tank. And even the skid plate in the front has an integrated recovery hook. So it's meant to be working straight out of the box. Plus, versus the Telluride, when the going gets tough, this TrailSport is actually going to get there further because It can direct up to 70% of the torque in that back axle rather than just 50-50. And then say you lose one wheel off the back, it's either up in the air or it's slipping. Well, the software logic will then automatically distribute the torque to the wheel that's gripping, but it'll still keep transferring torque to that other wheel that's spinning, so then when you get back on the ground, the power is basically uninterrupted. These are nice tricks because there's no low range transfer case in these SUVs. The Honda has actually done something here, and it's torque vectoring, so it's mechanically torque vectoring, shifting that torque left and right, which in many ways kind of mimics a limited slip diff. All around, if you're talking about off-road equipment on a family SUV, the Pilot TrailSport is hitting that mission perfectly. The Telluride X-Pro, not so much. The 2023 Honda Pilot starts at $39,150 for the Sport. Now the base LX is unavailable to order at the moment, but it will be cheaper. The Telluride starts at $35,890 and it goes up. Actually, the Kia is no longer a value play anymore. It's $55,365 as equipped, whereas the Honda is $50,150. Now, if you didn't have this top prestige trim, the Kia would still be more expensive than the Honda. Not really sure where Kia is headed with these prices. The Telluride is very popular, but look at all the competition. This new Pilot, the Toyota Highlander, the Ford Explorer. There's so many good choices in a midsize SUV, and the Kia, as great as it is, the price kind of bothers me. So where does this one end? Frankly, it starts and ends with the Honda. Now, as much as I love that Kia Telluride, it was great when it came out for 2019, and make no mistake, it still is an exceptional vehicle. But right now in 2023, this vehicle is so much more expensive for what you're getting. It's got better tech, I'll give it that, but the Honda has the better chassis, the better driving position in the seats. It feels like a more cohesive vehicle on and off the road, and that is the entire point of buying either of these two off-road trims. So the Honda, I think, is the clear winner, not by a little bit, but by a lot. So when Kia puts an all-new Telluride out there, they've got some chassis and drivetrain components to refresh, particularly the engine and the transmission. I think they will, but hats off to Honda for this one. So what do you think? Do you agree with me? If not, tell us in the comments and tell us what you want us to review next. Go to CarGurus.com, subscribe. We'll see you next time.